What no one expected, what no one could have possibly imagined was that the star of the event, a calm and disciplined German shepherd named Rex, would suddenly stop in his tracks, lock his eyes on the massive painting that hung just above the stage, and growl. Without warning, Rex lunged. His teeth tore through the aged canvas with fury. Screams rang out. Confusion spread. Some thought he'd gone rogue. But when the painting fell, revealing what was hidden behind it, the entire room went silent. What Rex had found would expose the school's darkest secret. A metal box, rusted and locked, embedded in the wall behind the Young Scholars of Tomorrow mural that had hung in Jefferson High School for over 40 years. Officer Bradley Thompson stood frozen, watching as his partner's discovery silenced 300 students and faculty members. The truth hidden behind that innocent painting would change everything forever. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching. From now, let's continue with the story. Jefferson High School stood as a monument to small-town American education in Millfield, Virginia. Built in 1965 during the height of Cold War tensions, its red brick exterior and white columns projected stability and tradition. Located just 70 miles from Langley and the CIA headquarters, the town had always maintained a quiet, unassuming presence in America's history. The school itself, with its well-manicured grounds and recently renovated gymnasium, served as the community's pride. Officer Bradley Thompson hadn't expected anything unusual when he agreed to bring Rex to the school's American Heritage Day celebration. At 42, Bradley carried himself with the straight-backed discipline of his military past. The lines around his eyes had deepened since losing his wife to cancer 3 years ago, and the gray at his temples had spread. His service in Vietnam had left him with both a purple heart and invisible wounds that still woke him in the night. Rex, his 6-year-old German shepherd partner, had become both his closest companion and his lifeline. Rex had come to the K-9 unit after distinguished service as a rescue dog following Hurricane Maria. His intelligence and discipline had made him a department star, though few knew how gently he would lay his head on Bradley's lap during the officer's darkest moments. Principal Eleanor Whitfield had greeted them at the school entrance that morning. At 58, her silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She had dedicated 30 years to education. Her father's military background had instilled in her a sense of duty that defined her leadership style. She couldn't have known how personally the day's events would affect her. The art teacher, Melissa Campbell, had proudly pointed out the mural during their pre-event tour. "One of our most treasured pieces," she'd explained, her hands gesturing with the animation of someone deeply connected to creative expression. Painted in 1978 by a local artist, we've preserved it carefully through 3 renovations. Among the students seated cross-legged on the gymnasium floor, 16-year-old Tyler Anderson had watched the K-9 demonstration with unusual intensity. Unlike his classmates, his interest seemed less about the impressive police dog and more about something deeper, as though he'd come looking for answers rather than entertainment. The serious set of his jaw and thoughtful blue eyes hinted at an old soul in a young body. None of them could have anticipated how their lives would intertwine in the aftermath of what was about to occur. The morning of May 15th dawned clear and bright in Millfield. American flags lined the main entrance to Jefferson High School, and red, white, and blue bunting draped the gymnasium entrance. American Heritage Day had been a school tradition for decades, bringing together students, faculty, and community members to celebrate the nation's history, and values. Bradley Thompson arrived early, parking his police SUV in the designated visitor spot. He opened the rear door, and Rex jumped out, alert and professional. The German Shepherd's ears perked forward as he took in the new environment, his training evident in the disciplined way he stayed by Bradley's side despite the excitement around them. "Officer Thompson, right on time," Principal Whitfield called from the school entrance. She approached with an extended hand, her navy blazer and pearl necklace lending her an air of formality appropriate for the day's events. "We're so excited to have you and Rex with us today. The students have been talking about nothing else all week." "Happy to be here, ma'am," Bradley replied with a polite nod. "Rex loves meeting students. He's a natural with kids." As if understanding his name had been mentioned, Rex sat at attention, his intelligent eyes moving between the humans conversing above him. "Let me show you to the gymnasium. We've set up everything as you requested: open space for the demonstrations, barriers to keep the students at a safe distance, and a microphone so everyone can hear your presentation." They walked through the school's wide hallways, passing trophy cases and bulletin boards covered with student artwork. Principal Whitfield pointed out various features of the school with obvious pride, occasionally greeting students by name as they passed. "Your school has quite a history," Bradley commented, noticing the dates on older trophies and awards. "Built in '65, though we've renovated several times since then," she replied. "My father was actually part of the community committee that supervised the construction. He'd be pleased to see it still standing strong after all these years." As they approached the gymnasium, an energetic woman with short auburn hair and paint-speckled jeans hurried toward them, carrying a stack of programs. "Officer Thompson, this is Melissa Campbell, our art teacher and the coordinator for today's event," the principal introduced. "Wonderful to meet you," Melissa said, shifting her papers to shake his hand. "I hope you don't mind, but I've incorporated your demonstration into my students' American Heroes project. They'll be sketching Rex during your presentation." Bradley smiled. "He'll be flattered. Just might need to pose a bit extra for the artists." Melissa laughed, and then gestured toward the far wall of the gymnasium they were now entering. "That's our pride and joy over there, young scholars of tomorrow. It's been watching over our events since 1978. Bradley glanced at the large mural that dominated the wall above the small stage. It depicted students reading beneath a sprawling oak tree. The colors somewhat faded with age, but the idyllic scene still clear. Something about the painting struck him as unusual, perhaps the slightly formal posture of the children, or the oddly specific details in the background, but he dismissed the thought as they continued their preparations. By 10 o'clock, the gymnasium had filled with students seated on the floor in organized sections by grade level. Teachers stood along the walls, and a small section of chairs held parent volunteers and a few elderly community members who regularly attended school functions. Principal Whitfield welcomed everyone with a brief speech about American Heritage Day, then introduced Bradley and Rex to enthusiastic applause. "Thank you for that warm welcome," Bradley began, standing center stage with Rex sitting alertly beside him. "This is Rex, and he's been my partner in the K-9 unit for 3 years now, before joining our police department. Rex was a certified rescue dog who helped find survivors after Hurricane Maria." The students leaned forward, clearly captivated by the handsome German Shepherd who sat with perfect posture, surveying the crowd with intelligent eyes. Bradley proceeded with the planned demonstration, showing how Rex responded to various commands, both verbal and hand signals. The dog moved with precision, showcasing his obedience training. Students gasped with delight when Rex demonstrated his ability to find a hidden object, a small bag of harmless training scent that had been concealed beneath a chair. "Rex has been trained to detect various substances," Bradley explained, rewarding the dog with a quick pat. "His sense of smell is approximately 40 times stronger than ours, allowing him to find things that would be impossible for humans to detect." As the demonstration continued, Bradley noticed a boy in the front row, Tyler Anderson, according to his name tag, watching with unusual intensity. Unlike his classmates who reacted with excitement to Rex's skills, this student observed with a studious expression, occasionally glancing between the dog and the mural on the wall. "Now we'll show you how Rex helps us apprehend suspects," Bradley announced, nodding to Principal Whitfield, who had volunteered to play the role of a runner. The principal jogged across the gymnasium as planned, and Rex followed Bradley's command to pursue and stop her, gently taking hold of her sleeve without applying pressure. The students clapped and cheered at the perfect execution. Bradley called Rex back to his side, ready to move to the question and answer portion of the presentation. Rex trotted back obediently. But as he passed the center of the gymnasium, something changed. The dog's ears suddenly pricked forward, his body stiffening. "Rex, heel!" Bradley commanded, noticing the shift in his partner's demeanor. Instead of complying, Rex turned his head toward the mural on the wall. His nostrils flared, and a low growl rumbled in his throat. Bradley had seen this behavior before, not during demonstrations or routine patrols, but in serious operations, when Rex had detected something dangerous. A chill ran down his spine. "Rex!" he called again, more firmly. The dog took a step toward the painting, then another. The students fell silent, sensing something unplanned was happening. Bradley moved quickly to Rex's side, placing a hand on his harness. "Is everything all right?" "Officer Thompson?" Principal Whitfield asked, her voice tense. Before Bradley could answer, Rex lunged forward, pulling free from his grip with a strength that caught the veteran officer by surprise. The German shepherd bounded toward the stage and launched himself at the mural, his powerful jaws tearing into the canvas with determined precision. Screams erupted from the students. Teachers moved forward automatically to protect their charges. Melissa Campbell cried out in dismay at the destruction of the artwork. "Rex, stop!" Bradley shouted, rushing toward his partner. But even as he reached the stage, he recognized that Rex wasn't acting out of aggression or fear. This was the focused, purposeful behavior of a working dog who had found what he was trained to find. The painting tore away from the wall, revealing a section of discolored plaster with a small metal panel set flush against it. The room fell into shocked silence as Bradley approached the exposed area, Rex now sitting alertly beside the torn canvas, his duty completed. The gymnasium remained eerily silent as Bradley approached the exposed metal panel. His police training kicked in immediately, and he raised a hand to keep everyone back. "Principal Whitfield, I need everyone to exit the gymnasium in an orderly fashion," he said, his voice calm but authoritative. "Teachers, please escort your students to their classrooms." Eleanor Whitfield stood frozen for a moment, her eyes fixed on the metal panel that had been hidden behind the painting for decades. Her hand trembled slightly as she raised the microphone. "Students and faculty, please proceed calmly to your designated classrooms. This is not a drill, but there is no immediate danger. Follow your teacher's instructions." The evacuation proceeded with remarkable efficiency, though whispers and worried glances rippled through the crowd. Bradley noticed that Tyler Anderson, the intense young man from the front row, lingered longer than the others, his eyes locked on the wall until a teacher gently guided him toward the exit. "You too, Ms. Campbell," Bradley said to the art teacher, who stood staring at the shredded remains of the mural, tears welling in her eyes. "That painting was a piece of our history," she whispered, kneeling to gather a torn section of canvas. "It can't be replaced." "I understand, ma'am. But right now, I need to secure this area." Once the gymnasium had emptied except for Principal Whitfield, who insisted on staying. Bradley approached the metal panel. It was approximately 12 inches square, secured with what appeared to be an old-fashioned lock mechanism. The surrounding wall showed signs of having been specially constructed to accommodate this hidden compartment. "Do you have any idea what this might be?" Bradley asked Eleanor, who had moved closer, her face pale. "No," she replied, though something in her voice suggested uncertainty. "This school was built in 1965. Renovations in 78, 92, and 2010. The painting was installed after the first renovation." Bradley examined the panel without touching it, then reached for his radio to call for backup. "This is Officer Thompson requesting additional units at Jefferson High School. Possible discovery of a hidden compartment with unknown contents. No immediate threat identified." While waiting for backup, Bradley kept Rex at his side, occasionally praising the dog for his discovery. Eleanor paced the gymnasium, her composure gradually returning. "My father was on the original building committee," she said suddenly. "Walter Whitfield. He worked for the State Department back then." Bradley nodded, processing this information. The State Department had a lot of involvement during the Cold War years. Eleanor's eyes darted to his face. It was a different time. "Officer Thompson?" "The Soviet threat was very real." Before Bradley could respond, the gymnasium doors opened and 2 uniformed officers entered, followed by Police Chief Robert Garner, a barrel-chested man in his late 50s who had served Millfield for over 30 years. "Thompson, what have you got?" Garner asked. Approaching the stage, Bradley explained the situation while the chief examined the panel. After a brief discussion, they decided to photograph everything before attempting to open the compartment. "We should probably get someone from the County Historical Society," Melissa Campbell suggested. Having returned to the gymnasium despite Bradley's instructions, "If this is historically significant, this is a police matter for now." "Ms. Campbell," Chief Garner interrupted, "we need to determine if there's any safety concern first." As the officers worked, Bradley noticed a silver sedan pull into the school parking lot visible through the gymnasium windows. An elderly man emerged slowly, using a cane for support. Something about his deliberate movements and the way he surveyed the building suggested he hadn't arrived by coincidence. Moments later, the school secretary appeared at the gymnasium door. "Principal Whitfield, there's a Mr. James Harrington here insisting on speaking with you. He says it's about the incident in the gymnasium." Eleanor's face registered surprise. "Harrington, I don't recall." "He says he knew your father," the secretary added. The principal excused herself while Bradley and the chief continued their investigation. Using specialized tools, they carefully opened the metal panel to reveal a small compartment containing a metal box approximately the size of a thick textbook. The box was sealed with another lock and appeared to be waterproof and possibly fireproof by design. "This was deliberately hidden," Chief Garner murmured. Question is, by whom and why? The gymnasium doors opened again, and Eleanor returned accompanied by a tall, thin man with wispy white hair and piercing blue eyes. Despite his apparent age, Bradley estimated late 70s or early 80s, James Harrington carried himself with the straight posture of someone who had spent a lifetime in positions of authority. "That's government property you're handling," Harrington announced without preamble, his voice steady and commanding. "I'd appreciate if you'd secure it until proper authorities arrive." Chief Garner straightened up. "I'm the proper authority in Millfield. Mr. Harrington, may I ask how you knew about this compartment?" Harrington's gaze swept across the torn painting, the exposed panel, and finally rested on Rex, who had maintained his alert posture beside Bradley. "Impressive animal," he commented. "Belgian Malinois, German Shepherd." Bradley corrected. "Former rescue dog. Even more impressive, then. Most detection work is innate with Belgian Malinois. For a shepherd to pick up that scent after all these years." Harrington shook his head in admiration. "What scent would that be, sir?" Bradley asked, carefully watching the older man's reaction. Harrington smiled thinly. "I'm not at liberty to discuss classified matters, officer, but I can tell you I worked with Walter Whitfield Eleanor's father during a sensitive period of our nation's history." Principal Whitfield stepped forward. "You knew my father. He never mentioned a James Harrington." "He wouldn't have," the old man replied. "Security protocols were different then. But I can assure you, Walter and I worked closely from 1962 through 1967. The atmosphere in the gymnasium had shifted. What had started as a strange discovery during a school demonstration had suddenly taken on national security implications. Bradley felt a familiar tension, the same he'd experienced during certain operations in Vietnam when civilian and military objectives collided. Chief Garner broke the silence. "Mr. Harrington, unless you have credentials indicating otherwise, this remains under local jurisdiction until we determine contents and significance." While they were speaking, one of the officers had managed to open the metal box. Inside were several folders with faded red classified stamps across their covers, a small notebook with a black leather cover, what appeared to be building schematics rolled and sealed in a tube, and several photographs protected in plastic sleeves. "I believe this will serve as my credential," Harrington said quietly, producing a worn leather wallet from his jacket pocket. He opened it to reveal an ID card that, despite its age, clearly bore the CIA insignia. Principal Whitfield gasped softly. "CIA. My father was State Department." "Your father was many things, Eleanor," Harrington said gently. "Walter Whitfield served his country in ways few people will ever know." Bradley looked from the exposed documents to the torn painting, suddenly understanding. The mural wasn't just covering the compartment, it was marking it. Wasn't it a signal hiding in plain sight? Harrington's eyebrows rose slightly. "You have good instincts, Officer Thompson." As they stood contemplating the implications of the discovery, the gymnasium door burst open again. Tyler Anderson rushed in, followed by a flustered teacher trying to stop him. "I knew it," the boy exclaimed, his eyes wide as he saw the open compartment and scattered documents. "My grandfather said there was something hidden in the school. No one believed him." The unexpected arrival of Tyler Anderson created a momentary disruption in the tense atmosphere of the gymnasium. Chief Garner instructed the young man's teacher to escort him back to class. But Harrington raised a hand. "Who was your grandfather?" "Young man," he asked, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being answered. Tyler straightened his shoulders. Thomas Anderson, sir. He worked as a maintenance supervisor here from 1965 to 1983. He always said this school had secrets in its walls. Everyone thought he was just being dramatic. Bradley noticed Harrington and Principal Whitfield exchange a quick glance. There was recognition in the old CIA man's eyes. Thomas Anderson, Harrington repeated slowly. Yes, I remember him. Dedicated man, very thorough in his work. He died last year, Tyler said, his voice catching slightly. I've been going through his journals. There were strange entries about Jefferson High. Chief Garner cleared his throat. This is becoming more complicated by the minute. Mr. Harrington, while I respect your background, I need to establish proper chain of custody for these materials. We'll secure everything and consult with federal authorities. Of course, Harrington nodded. I'm merely here as a courtesy to Walter Whitfield's memory. I suspected something like this might eventually surface. The chief directed his officers to carefully photograph and document everything before sealing the items for transport to the police station. While they worked, Bradley observed the interactions between Harrington, Principal Whitfield, and young Tyler Anderson. There was an undercurrent of tension and unspoken knowledge flowing between them. Melissa Campbell had gathered the torn pieces of the mural, carefully arranging them on the gymnasium floor like a puzzle. The painting might hold clues, she suggested. Artists often include symbolic elements in their work. Bradley moved to examine the fragments more closely. The pastoral scene of students reading beneath a tree seemed innocent enough at first glance, but now he noticed peculiar details, the specific number of students, the unusual angle of the tree, a distant building that didn't match any structure in Millfield. Who was the artist? He asked. Melissa consulted a small plaque she'd rescued from the frame. Raymond Foster, 1978. Commissioned by the school board. Harrington's head turned sharply at the name. Foster, he murmured, almost to himself. By late afternoon, the school had been dismissed early, with a brief explanation about an unexpected maintenance issue in the gymnasium. News traveled fast in Millfield, however, and local reporters had already gathered at the school entrance, eager for details about the police presence. Chief Garner established a secure perimeter around the gymnasium while the evidence was processed. The metal box and its contents were carefully transported to the police station, where they would be kept in the evidence room until federal authorities could be consulted. Officer Thompson, I want you and Rex to stay with this, the chief instructed. Your K-9 found it. You stay on it. I'll handle the press for now. Bradley nodded, grateful for the assignment. Something about this case had hooked him deeply, perhaps the connection to the 1960s, so close to his own military service in Vietnam, or perhaps the mystery itself. As the gymnasium emptied, Harrington approached Bradley. Your dog has exceptional abilities. Officer Thompson, not every K-9 would detect that particular scent after so many years. What exactly did he detect? Bradley asked directly. The older man smiled thinly. A chemical marker, standard procedure for certain classified drop points during that era, designed to degrade over time, but apparently some trace remained. Why are you really here, Mr. Harrington? It seems convenient that you arrived so quickly after our discovery. Harrington's expression remained neutral. Let's just say I've maintained an interest in Walter Whitfield's projects. When certain alarms are triggered, people like me take notice." Before Bradley could press further, Principal Whitfield joined them, her composure partially restored, though strain showed around her eyes. "My father never told me," she said quietly. "All those years, I thought he was just a State Department bureaucrat handling diplomatic paperwork." "He was protecting you, Eleanor," Harrington replied. "The less you knew, the safer you were. That was protocol then. And the painting, was that part of the protocol too? The art teacher might be right about examining it carefully," Harrington suggested, avoiding a direct answer. "Foster had unique methods." The next morning, Bradley arrived at the police station early to find Chief Garner already in his office. Phone pressed to his ear, his expression grim. Through the glass partition, Bradley could see the chief's gestures becoming increasingly agitated before he finally hung up. "Problems?" Bradley asked when Garner emerged. "The FBI will be sending agents this afternoon," the chief replied. "But there's already pressure from somewhere higher up to handle this discreetly." "Meaning what?" "Exactly. Meaning they want us to turn everything over without public disclosure." Garner ran a hand over his face. 40-year-old secrets should stay buried, according to them." Bradley frowned. "The community has a right to know if something significant happened here." "I agree. That's why we're going to document everything thoroughly before anyone takes this out of our jurisdiction." They spent the morning examining the contents of the metal box more carefully. The classified folders contained reports about surveillance operations conducted from 1965 to 1978, focusing on suspected Soviet sympathizers in the region. The building schematics showed Jefferson High's original construction plans, with detailed annotations about a section beneath the east wing that didn't appear in the official blueprints. "There's a whole sublevel that was never disclosed," Bradley realized, comparing the documents to the school's current emergency evacuation plans. Chief Garner nodded grimly. "Hidden rooms built during the height of Cold War paranoia. The question is, what were they using them for?" The black notebook proved to be a log of coded entries, presumably recording activities or contacts. Several photographs showed men in suits standing before the school during its construction, while others depicted what appeared to be equipment installations in concrete-walled rooms. By midday, word had spread throughout Millfield. The local newspaper's website featured a headline about a historical discovery at Jefferson High, though details remained vague. Curious residents drove slowly past the school, where the police presence continued. Melissa Campbell arrived at the station with several large art portfolios. "I've assembled what I could salvage from the mural," she explained. "And I found something interesting in our archives about the artist." She spread photographs of the intact painting on a conference room table, alongside copies of the original commission documents. Raymond Foster wasn't just any artist. He taught at the Rhode Island School of Design before coming to Millfield in 1977, supposedly for health reasons. He only completed this one commission before moving away in 1979. Bradley studied the photographs. "What am I looking for?" Melissa pointed to the background details of the mural. "These elements don't match our town. That building in the distance, it's the Moscow State University Tower. And the pattern of the students' positioning. It doesn't look random to me." Chief Garner leaned closer. "You think the painting itself contained coded information?" It would be consistent with Cold War tradecraft, Bradley observed, thinking of his military intelligence briefings. Hidden messages in plain sight. The station door opened and Tyler Anderson entered, looking nervous but determined. He carried a worn leather journal. "I know I shouldn't be here," he said quickly, before anyone could speak. "But there's something in my grandfather's journal you need to see." Chief Garner sighed but motioned the boy forward. "This is highly irregular, but given the circumstances—" Tyler opened the journal to a marked page. "My grandfather wrote about helping install a special communication system during the 1965 construction. He didn't know what it was for exactly, but he noted that men in suits supervised the work, and that certain areas were off-limits even to him afterward." Bradley read the relevant passage, noting the precise, detailed observations of a man who clearly paid attention to his surroundings. Thomas Anderson had documented unusual deliveries, restricted access areas, and his growing suspicions about the true purpose of certain modifications to the school's design. "There's more," Tyler continued, turning pages. In 1978, he wrote about the painting installation. He thought it was strange that government officials supervised the hanging of artwork, and that they insisted on that specific location. Chief Garner's phone rang, interrupting them. After a brief conversation, he hung up with a troubled expression. "The FBI agents will be here within the hour, and James Harrington is at the school right now, insisting on access to the East Wing." "The East Wing," Bradley repeated, looking down at the schematics. "That's where these hidden rooms would be located." "I'll head over there," Bradley volunteered. "Rex might be able to detect other hidden areas." The chief nodded. "Take Officer Martinez with you, and Thompson, tread carefully. This Harrington character has connections we don't fully understand yet." When Bradley arrived at Jefferson High with Rex and Officer Martinez, he found James Harrington standing in the empty hallway of the East Wing, leaning on his cane as he studied the wall with intense concentration. Principal Whitfield stood nearby, arms crossed defensively across her chest. "Mr. Harrington was just explaining how my father helped establish a surveillance post in a public school," she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Apparently, American children received their education directly above a spy operation for 13 years. Harrington turned slowly. "It wasn't that simple. Eleanor, your father was a patriot responding to the needs of his country during a dangerous time. By putting children at risk," she demanded. "No child was ever in danger," Harrington insisted. "The facility was completely separate, with dedicated access points and secure protocols." Bradley stepped forward. "Mr. Harrington, Chief Garner asked me to remind you that this is an active investigation. Any attempt to access restricted areas—" "I'm merely providing historical context. Officer Thompson," the old man interrupted smoothly, "as one of the few surviving individuals with direct knowledge of this operation, I thought my insights might be valuable." Rex had begun moving methodically along the hallway wall, nose working close to the floor trim. Bradley watched his partner carefully, recognizing the behavior that indicated he was tracking a scent. "Your dog is quite remarkable," Harrington observed. "The chemical markers should have degraded completely by now." "Rex isn't just detecting chemicals," Bradley replied. "He's trained to notice structural anomalies, too, changes in airflow, hollow spaces behind solid surfaces, as if to prove his handler's point." Rex stopped beside a section of wall between two classroom doors, sat down, and looked expectantly at Bradley. "The standard alert position indicating he'd found something." Officer Martinez stepped forward with a small electronic device. "Stud finder," he explained, running it across the wall. "Interesting. The pattern here is different from standard construction." Bradley examined the wall more closely. Unlike the exposed panel in the gymnasium, there was no visible indication of a hidden compartment, but the slight variations in the paint texture suggested previous modifications. "Principal Whitfield, do you have the original blueprints for the school?" Bradley asked. "In my office," she confirmed, "though I'm beginning to wonder if they're even accurate." While Eleanor went to retrieve the blueprints, Bradley continued his examination of the area Rex had identified. What exactly was this facility used for? "Mr. Harrington? The truth this time." The older man sighed, suddenly looking every one of his 80-plus years. It began as a simple listening post, The geographical position of Millfield made it ideal for intercepting certain radio transmissions. But as tensions escalated, the operation expanded. "Into what?" Harrington hesitated. "Information processing, analysis. Occasionally, debriefing of assets." "Assets?" Bradley repeated. "You mean spies?" "I mean patriotic individuals who provided valuable intelligence at great personal risk," Harrington corrected firmly. Principal Whitfield returned with the blueprints, which she unrolled on a nearby table. The official plans showed nothing unusual about the East Wing, just standard classrooms, storage closets, and utility access points. "These aren't accurate," Harrington confirmed, examining them briefly. "There should be a maintenance access panel approximately where your dog is indicating." Bradley nodded to Officer Martinez, who began a more thorough examination of the wall section. Using tools from his equipment belt, he carefully probed the area until there was a soft click and a section of the baseboard shifted slightly. "There's definitely something here," Martinez confirmed. News of their discovery spread quickly through the school's administrative staff. The school secretary appeared at the end of the hallway. "Principal Whitfield, there are more reporters outside, and someone from the State Department just called asking to speak with you urgently." Eleanor's expression hardened. "Tell them I'm unavailable until further notice. And please call Ms. Campbell. I want her to document everything we find," as Martinez continued working to access the hidden panel. Bradley's radio crackled with Chief Garner's voice. "Thompson, be advised the FBI agents have arrived at the station. They're reviewing the materials now and will be heading to your location shortly." "Understood, Chief," Bradley responded. "We may have located another hidden area in the East Wing." "Proceed with caution," Garner instructed. "Document everything." Harrington had moved closer to the wall, watching Martinez's progress with keen interest. "There should be a secondary release mechanism," he offered. "Standard design for that period would include redundant access controls." Martinez glanced at Bradley, who nodded permission. Following Harrington's guidance, the officer located a second pressure point, and the panel slid open to reveal a small compartment containing what appeared to be an old telephone junction box. "This was an emergency communication line," Harrington explained. "Direct connection to Langley in case of urgent developments." "In a school," Eleanor said flatly, her voice dripping with disapproval. Hidden in plain sight was the point. "Principal Whitfield," Harrington replied. "Soviet intelligence would never suspect a rural American high school of housing a critical communication node." Melissa Campbell arrived, her camera in hand, and began methodically photographing the discovery. "This is unbelievable," she murmured. "All these years, teaching in this building, never knowing." Rex had continued his methodical search of the hallway and now alerted at another location, approximately 20 feet further down the corridor. This pattern continued until the German Shepherd had identified 5 different points of interest along the east wing. "There's an entire network hidden within these walls," Bradley realized. Looking back at the row of alert points Rex had identified, the facility beneath the school was more extensive than most operatives knew, Harrington admitted. Compartmentalization was essential to security. As they were speaking, Tyler Anderson appeared at the end of the hallway, out of breath as if he'd been running. "I've found something else in my grandfather's things," he announced, holding up a small metal key. He kept it hidden inside an old clock. "There's an engraving JH65B3, Jefferson High, 1965, basement section 3. Harrington's expression shifted, subtly surprised, quickly masked. That would be a master access key. Very few were made. Bradley looked from the key to the newly discovered panel, then back to the old CIA operative. "Mr. Harrington, just how significant was this facility?" Before the elderly man could answer, the school's front doors opened, and 2 individuals in dark suits entered, their formal demeanor and purposeful stride immediately identifying them as federal agents. The Cold War might have ended decades ago, but its secrets were only beginning to emerge from the walls of Jefferson High School. The arrival of the FBI agents changed the atmosphere instantly. They introduced themselves as Special Agents Dawson and Mercer, both with the Counterintelligence Division. Agent Dawson, a stern-faced woman in her 40s with her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, took immediate control of the situation. "This area needs to be secured," she announced, showing her credentials to Chief Garner, who had arrived just behind them. "We'll need everyone to step back while we assess the situation." Bradley noticed how quickly James Harrington's demeanor shifted from the confident former operative to an elderly man leaning more heavily on his cane. A calculated adjustment, Bradley suspected, watching how the old man's eyes remained sharp and assessing. "Mr. Harrington," Agent Mercer said, recognizing him immediately. "Langley mentioned you might be here. Your reputation precedes you." "Just a concerned citizen these days," Harrington replied mildly, offering historical context when needed. Principal Whitfield stepped forward. "This is my school, and I believe I'm entitled to know exactly what has been hidden within its walls for decades. My father was involved in establishing this facility, and I want to understand what he was part of." Agent Dawson's expression softened slightly. "I understand your concern, Principal Whitfield. We'll provide as much information as we can, but some aspects may remain classified even after all these years." Chief Garner cleared his throat. "My department discovered this site, and Officer Thompson's K-9 unit identified these additional locations. We expect to be kept in the loop on anything that affects public safety in Millfield." A tense negotiation followed, resulting in a compromise the FBI would take lead on the investigation. But local police would remain involved, and Principal Whitfield would be briefed on any findings relevant to school safety. Melissa Campbell was permitted to continue documenting the discoveries for historical purposes, with the understanding that all materials would be reviewed before any public disclosure. With the jurisdictional issues temporarily resolved, attention turned to Tyler Anderson's key. Agent Mercer examined it carefully before confirming Harrington's assessment. "This appears to be a master access key for the facility," he agreed. The question is, how did your grandfather come to possess it? Young man, Tyler shrugged. He was the maintenance supervisor. Maybe he needed access to all areas, not to restricted intelligence areas, Harrington said, his voice thoughtful. Thomas Anderson had higher clearance than his position would typically warrant. Interesting. Bradley watched the interaction closely, noting how Harrington seemed genuinely surprised by this revelation. The layers of secrecy were peeling back, revealing unexpected connections. With Tyler's key and the building schematics found in the hidden compartment, they were able to identify a concealed entrance to the sub-level facility, located in what was currently a storage room adjacent to the boiler room. A section of wall concealed a narrow staircase leading downward. "I've been in that storage room hundreds of times," Principal Whitfield said, shaking her head in disbelief. "Never suspected a thing." Agent Dawson insisted on proper protocols before proceeding. "We'll need to verify structural integrity and ensure there are no hazardous materials before anyone descends," Bradley suggested. "Rex can help with that. He's trained to detect a wide range of substances, including chemical residues." The agents agreed, and soon a small team prepared to enter the hidden facility, Agents Dawson and Mercer, Bradley with Rex, Chief Garner, and after considerable discussion, James Harrington, whose first-hand knowledge of the facility could prove invaluable. "I'm coming too," Principal Whitfield insisted. "This is my school and my father's legacy." After a brief consultation, Agent Dawson reluctantly agreed, though she required Eleanor to sign several non-disclosure agreements first. The hidden door opened with surprising ease, considering its age, revealing a narrow concrete staircase illuminated only by their flashlights. The air was stale, but not unbreathable, suggesting some minimal ventilation system remained functional. The facility was designed to maintain environmental integrity indefinitely, Harrington explained as they descended. Self-contained systems, minimal degradation. At the bottom of the stairs, they encountered a heavy metal door with another keypad and lock mechanism. Tyler's key fit perfectly, and with a sequence of numbers provided by Harrington, the door opened to reveal a corridor extending beneath the east wing of the school. "Remarkable," Agent Mercer murmured, playing his flashlight over walls lined with now outdated telecommunications equipment. "This is like stepping into a time capsule." Rex moved ahead, methodically checking each area before Bradley allowed the others to follow. The facility consisted of several interconnected rooms, a communication center filled with radio equipment, a small conference room with a large table and chairs still in place, several office spaces with desks and filing cabinets, and what appeared to be a secure records room with metal shelving units. This was a significant operation, Agent Dawson observed, examining the extent of the installation. "Far more than a simple listening post." Harrington nodded, moving through the space with the familiarity of someone returning to a once frequent workplace. Project Blackboard was one of our most successful counterintelligence operations during the late 60s and 70s. The school provided perfect cover, regular traffic in and out, deliveries, maintenance work, all activities that wouldn't raise suspicion. Project Blackboard, Principal Whitfield repeated. "You ran an intelligence operation beneath children, with extraordinary precautions," Harrington assured her. "Security was our highest priority." Bradley had moved ahead with Rex, allowing the German Shepherd to investigate thoroughly. In the records room, Rex alerted at a particular filing cabinet. Sitting at attention, and looking back at his handler. "He's found something," Bradley called to the others. The filing cabinet was locked, but Agent Mercer produced a set of specialized tools and quickly gained access. Inside were dozens of folders, their classified markings faded but still visible, organized by year from 1965 to 1978. "These should have been removed when the facility was decommissioned," Harrington said, frowning. "Standard procedure would have required all sensitive materials to be transferred to Langley, unless someone wanted them to remain hidden," Bradley suggested. They carefully extracted the files, discovering operational reports, surveillance logs, and what appeared to be dossiers on numerous individuals from the region. The agents quickly established a protocol for handling the documents, with Agent Dawson photographing each item in situ before it was removed. In the communications center, Chief Garner discovered a logbook containing entries up to October 1978, with the final entry reading simply, "Operation terminated by order of director. Facility to be sealed indefinitely." "What happened in 1978?" Bradley asked, looking at Harrington. The elderly man's face had grown increasingly troubled as they explored the facility. "Policy changes. New directives from Washington. The political climate was shifting." "That's not the whole story," Principal Whitfield challenged, holding up a folder she'd found on a desk. "This mentions ethical concerns and potential civilian exposure. What were you people doing down here?" Before Harrington could respond, Rex alerted again, this time at what appeared to be a solid wall at the far end of the corridor. Bradley examined the area carefully, finding a barely perceptible seam indicating another hidden door. "There's more to this facility," he announced. Agent Dawson stepped forward. "Let's proceed carefully. Mr. Harrington, are you aware of additional sections beyond what we've seen?" For the first time, Harrington appeared genuinely uncertain. "My access was primarily to the communications and analysis sections. If there were additional compartmentalized areas—" He hesitated. Walter Whitfield would have known. He had higher clearance than I did toward the end. Using Tyler's master key and additional techniques from Agent Mercer, they managed to access the hidden section. As the door swung open, revealing a room beyond, the atmosphere among the group shifted palpably. Unlike the utilitarian spaces they'd explored previously, this room was set up like a comfortable living area, with a small kitchenette, several beds against one wall, and what appeared to be a primitive medical examination area. Children's books and toys were still arranged on shelves, frozen in time. "What is this?" Principal Whitfield whispered, her voice strained. Harrington had gone very still, his face pale in the flashlight beam. "I didn't know about this section. This wasn't part of the operation I was briefed on." Agent Dawson moved methodically through the space, examining but not touching the items. "This appears to have been designed as a long-term holding area for multiple individuals." "Including children," Bradley added grimly, picking up a small teddy bear from one of the beds. Chief Garner had discovered a locked cabinet in the medical area, which Agent Mercer quickly opened. Inside were medical supplies consistent with the late 1970s, along with folders containing what appeared to be observation notes and test results. "Subject demonstrates heightened sensitivity to auditory stimuli following procedure A7. Garner read from one document, his expression darkening. "Recommend continuing modified protocol for subjects 3 through 6. The implications settled heavily over the group. This hidden section suggested that Project Blackboard may have involved human subjects, possibly including children, in some form of testing or observation program. "This can't be right," Harrington insisted, his voice uncharacteristically emotional. Domestic operations were strictly limited to intelligence gathering. Any testing programs were conducted in sanctioned facilities, with proper oversight. "Apparently, not all of them," Agent Dawson replied coldly. Principal Whitfield had moved to a desk in the corner, where she'd found a leather-bound journal. Her hands trembled as she opened it. "This is my father's handwriting," she said quietly. The group fell silent as she read, her expression transitioning from shock to grief to anger. "He was documenting his objections," she finally said, looking up with tears in her eyes. "He writes about unauthorized expansions of the project, ethical violations, his attempts to report concerns through proper channels." She turned a page. "His last entry mentions gathering evidence to force a shutdown of the entire operation." The painting, Bradley realized suddenly. The mural wasn't just covering a drop point, it was preserving evidence. Your father commissioned it specifically to hide documentation of whatever was happening here. Melissa Campbell, who had been allowed to join them after the initial security assessment, stepped forward. That would explain the strange elements in the composition. Raymond Foster wasn't just an artist, he was helping document what happened here. Harrington had moved to examine the journal in Principal Whitfield's hands. "Walter was a good man," he said softly. "One of the best I knew. If he turned against the project, he must have had compelling reasons. Compelling enough to risk his career and possibly his life," Agent Dawson observed. As they continued exploring the hidden section, Rex suddenly tensed. His attention focused on a section of flooring near the back wall. Bradley recognized the alert posture immediately, not the indication of hidden documents or chemical residues, but something far more concerning. "Everyone needs to step back," he commanded sharply. "Rex is giving his alert for human remains." The room fell silent as the implications of his statement registered. Agent Dawson immediately took charge, ordering everyone except Bradley and Rex to exit the area while she called for additional resources. "We'll need a forensic team," she said grimly. "This just became a potential crime scene." As they retreated to the main corridor, Principal Whitfield confronted Harrington, her composure finally breaking. "Did you know," she demanded, tears streaming down her face, "did you know what they were doing here? What happened to my father after he objected?" The elderly ex-operative seemed genuinely shaken. "Eleanor, I swear to you, I left this operation in early 1978. If something happened to Walter, if he discovered something that put him at risk..." He shook his head. "I've spent decades believing he retired to Florida. His personnel file indicated a full pension, a clean separation from service." Bradley watched the exchange carefully, his military experience having taught him to recognize authentic versus performed emotion. Harrington's distress appeared genuine, but that didn't mean he was entirely innocent. In the shadowy world of Cold War intelligence, compartmentalization meant that operatives often knew only fragments of the operations they served. The discovery beneath Jefferson High School was rapidly evolving from a historical curiosity into something far darker, a decades-old crime scene that might finally reveal the fate of Walter Whitfield and potentially others who had become inconvenient to whatever covert operation had truly been conducted beneath the feet of generations of schoolchildren. The next 48 hours transformed Jefferson High School from an educational institution into the center of a complex federal investigation. Classes were suspended indefinitely, with students sent home carrying hastily prepared packets of assignments and a carefully worded letter explaining that an historical discovery of significance required the temporary closure of the building. The reality was far more grave. The FBI's forensic team had confirmed Rex's alert human remains were indeed concealed beneath the floor of the hidden room. Preliminary examination suggested they had been there since the late 1970s, matching the timeline of the facility's sudden closure. Principal Eleanor Whitfield sat alone in her office, surrounded by photographs of students and teachers spanning her 3 decades at Jefferson High. The building had always represented something solid and trustworthy to her, a place where generations of young people found direction and purpose, and now its foundations were literally tainted with deception and possibly murder. Her father's journal lay open on her desk. She'd been permitted to keep it after the FBI had thoroughly photographed and documented its contents. Walter Whitfield's neat, precise handwriting filled pages with increasingly urgent observations about ethical breaches and unauthorized extensions of Project Blackboard. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Bradley Thompson entered, his face showing the strain of the past 2 days. Like Eleanor, he hadn't gone home since the discovery, catching brief moments of rest on a cot set up in the school's staff lounge. "The forensic team is finishing up," he said quietly. "They'll be removing the remains later today." Eleanor nodded, unable to find words adequate to the situation. After a moment, she asked, "Have they identified?" "Not yet. They'll need to conduct DNA analysis, check dental records. It could take time." The unspoken question hung between them. Was it her father buried beneath the school where she had worked for decades, never knowing she was walking above his grave? "James Harrington has been formally interviewed," Bradley continued. "The FBI has placed him under surveillance, though they don't have enough evidence to detain him." "Do you think he knew," Eleanor asked, "about what happened to my father?" Bradley considered the question carefully. "I think he knew parts of it. Intelligence operations of that era were deliberately compartmentalized. He may have known about Project Blackboard's official parameters without being aware of what happened in that hidden section. Or he's lying to save himself," Eleanor said bitterly. "That's also possible," Bradley acknowledged. "Men like Harrington spent decades practicing deception as a professional skill." A commotion in the hallway drew their attention. Through the office window, they could see Melissa Campbell engaged in a heated discussion with Agent Dawson. The art teacher was gesturing emphatically toward a portfolio she carried, while the FBI agent maintained a stance of professional restraint. Bradley and Eleanor stepped into the hallway just as Chief Garner arrived from the opposite direction. "Ms. Campbell believes she's found something significant in the mural fragments," Agent Dawson explained, her tone suggesting skepticism. "It's not just in the fragments," Melissa insisted. "I've been researching Raymond Foster, the artist, his background, his other works. There's a pattern. He wasn't just an artist. He was documenting things." "Documenting what, exactly?" Chief Garner asked. Melissa opened her portfolio on a nearby table, spreading out photographs of Foster's other works alongside reassembled images of the Jefferson High mural. Foster taught at the Rhode Island School of Design until 1975, when he suddenly resigned. After that, he created a series of works that appeared in small galleries across the eastern seaboard. Each painting depicted everyday American scenes, parks, schools, government buildings, but with subtle irregularities. She pointed to several details in different paintings. These aren't artistic flourishes. They're specific locations, people, dates all coded into seemingly innocent imagery. Agent Dawson leaned closer. You're suggesting the artist was some kind of operative or a whistleblower? Melissa countered. Look at the Jefferson mural closely. The children reading under the tree. Their positions form a pattern. And the books they're holding, the titles are just visible enough to read if you know what to look for. Bradley studied the photographs. What titles? Ethics in Research, The Human Subject, Mind and Memory. Not exactly typical reading material for the children depicted, Melissa explained. And look at this section. The school building in the background has exactly 12 windows visible, with the third one from the left showing a shadowy figure watching. 12th month, third day, December 3rd. Something significant happened on that date, Eleanor asked. According to your father's journal, December 3rd, 1977 was when he first documented his concerns about unauthorized testing protocols. Bradley recalled, looking at Eleanor for confirmation. She nodded slowly. Yes, that's right. He mentioned that date specifically. Chief Garner rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. So, this Foster character was working with Walter Whitfield, hiding evidence in plain sight through his artwork. It appears so, Melissa confirmed. And there's more. Foster painted 7 other murals in public buildings along the East Coast between 1976 and 1979. Each one was commissioned through different channels, but the pattern is consistent. I believe they all contain coded documentation of whatever was happening here. Agent Dawson's professional reserve finally cracked, revealing genuine interest. We'll need to locate all of these works. If they form a coherent documentation system, there's a problem, Melissa interrupted. 3 of the murals have been destroyed during renovations over the years. 2 others are in buildings that have changed ownership multiple times. I've only been able to confirm the current location of 1 other painting in the lobby of a courthouse in Northern Virginia. The implications settled heavily over the group. If Raymond Foster and Walter Whitfield had indeed created a distributed documentation system through public artwork, much of that evidence had already been lost to time and circumstance. Bradley was about to respond when his phone vibrated with an incoming message. He checked it quickly, his expression growing serious. That was Officer Martinez. Tyler Anderson is at the station. He's upset, says someone broke into his grandfather's house last night and specifically targeted his personal effects. The burglar took Thomas Anderson's journals and photographs. That can't be a coincidence, Chief Garner said grimly. No, Bradley agreed. Someone is trying to eliminate remaining evidence. Eleanor had gone very still, her face pale. If they targeted Tyler's grandfather's materials, they might come after my father's journal, too. Agent Dawson immediately stepped forward. We'll arrange protection for both you and the Anderson boy. These documents are now key evidence in an active investigation. As they discussed security arrangements, Bradley's attention was drawn to Rex, who had been resting in a corner of the hallway. The German shepherd had suddenly risen to his feet, ears alert, attention focused toward the school's main entrance. "Something's wrong," Bradley said quietly, moving to his partner's side. Before anyone could respond, the sound of breaking glass echoed from the direction of the front office, followed by the distinctive pop of a small explosion and rapidly spreading smoke. "Fire alarm!" Chief Garner shouted, reaching for the nearest pull station. Bradley's training kicked in immediately. "Smoke bomb diversion. Someone's trying to breach the building." Agent Dawson was already on her radio, calling for backup while simultaneously drawing her weapon. "Secure the evidence and evacuate non-essential personnel," she ordered. The school's fire alarm blared through the corridors as smoke began drifting toward them. Bradley knelt beside Rex, giving him a hand signal to remain in alert mode rather than evacuation protocol. "Go," he told Eleanor and Melissa. "Chief Garner will get you out safely. Take the journal with you." Eleanor clutched her father's journal tightly against her chest, her academic composure giving way to raw fear. "Be careful," she said to Bradley, her voice barely audible above the alarm. As Garner escorted the women toward the nearest exit, Bradley and Agent Dawson moved in the opposite direction, toward the source of the disturbance. Rex led the way, his training making him invaluable in the increasingly smoke-filled environment. They hadn't gone far when 3 figures emerged from the haze, wearing dark clothing and what appeared to be professional-grade gas masks. Upon seeing Bradley and Dawson, one of the intruders raised his arm, revealing a weapon. "Federal agent, drop your weapon!" Dawson shouted, taking cover behind a row of lockers. Instead of complying, the intruder fired, the bullet embedding itself in the wall inches from where Bradley had ducked into a classroom doorway. Rex growled, his posture shifting from alert to defensive. "They're heading for the basement access," Bradley realized, recognizing their direction. "We can't let them reach the evidence." Dawson responded. What had begun as an historical discovery had now escalated into active violence. Somewhere in the smoke and confusion, Eleanor heard a second explosion, followed by the sound of gunfire. She clutched her father's journal tighter, tears streaming down her face as Chief Garner pulled her toward the exit. "Walter," she whispered, "what did you uncover that's worth killing for, even after all these years?" The assault on Jefferson High School lasted less than 15 minutes, yet those minutes would permanently alter the lives of everyone involved. The 3 masked intruders had come with clear objectives: secure any remaining evidence from the underground facility and eliminate witnesses if necessary. They had not, however, anticipated the presence of a highly trained K-9 officer and an FBI agent with counterintelligence experience, Bradley and Agent Dawson, with Rex providing crucial support, managed to contain the intruders in the eastern corridor, preventing them from reaching the basement access point. The standoff ended when local police and FBI reinforcements arrived, surrounding the building and cutting off escape routes. 2 of the intruders were captured, while the third sustained injuries during an attempted escape through a second-floor window. By nightfall, the school had been fully secured and the investigation had expanded dramatically. The captured intruders carried no identification, but preliminary interrogation revealed they were private contractors hired through layers of cutouts and shell companies. Their equipment was military-grade but unmarked, providing few immediate clues about who had dispatched them. Eleanor Whitfield sat in an FBI safe house 10 miles outside Millfield, her father's journal secured in an evidence bag on the table before her. Tyler Anderson had been brought to the same location, along with his mother, both visibly shaken by the rapid escalation of events. "I don't understand," Tyler said, his adolescent voice cracking with stress. "Why would anyone care about my grandfather's old journals? He was just the maintenance guy." Agent Mercer, who had been assigned to protect them while Dawson remained at the crime scene, offered a sympathetic look. "Sometimes maintenance personnel have access to areas and information that others don't. Your grandfather may have seen things he wasn't supposed to see." Eleanor stared at her father's journal, its pages now officially evidence in what had become a federal investigation involving attempted murder, breaking and entering, and the desecration of human remains. The forensic team had confirmed that someone had attempted to access the underground facility during the attack, specifically targeting the area where the remains had been discovered. "They're trying to hide something even now," she said quietly. "After more than 40 years. Bradley arrived at the safe house shortly after midnight, exhausted but determined to brief Eleanor and Tyler personally. Rex padded alongside him, the German shepherd showing no signs of fatigue despite the day's exertions. "The FBI has taken the intruders into federal custody," he informed them, accepting the coffee Agent Mercer offered with grateful hands. "They're not talking yet, but we did get a break. One of them had a burner phone with a single contact number. It traces back to a law firm in D.C. that has historical connections to government contracting." "James Harrington?" Eleanor asked immediately. "He was brought in for questioning after the attack." Bradley confirmed. "But he appears genuinely shocked by the violence. His alibi for the time of the incident checks out. He was meeting with his doctor for a scheduled appointment." "So if not Harrington, then who?" Tyler asked, petting Rex, who had settled beside the boy's chair, sensing his anxiety. Bradley exchanged glances with Agent Mercer before responding. "There's a theory developing that Project Blackboard may have had multiple oversight layers, with different agencies or branches involved. Some participants may have known only pieces of the operation." "A compartmentalized structure," Agent Mercer elaborated. "Standard procedure for sensitive operations, especially during that era. Harrington might have known about the intelligence-gathering aspects without being aware of the other activities." Eleanor's hand moved instinctively to her father's journal. "My father knew. That's why he tried to document it, why he worked with Raymond Foster to preserve evidence. And possibly why he disappeared," Bradley added gently. The room fell silent as the implication settled. The remains found beneath the school had not yet been positively identified, but the circumstantial evidence increasingly suggested Walter Whitfield had been silenced for attempting to expose whatever had happened in the hidden section of the facility. Tyler suddenly straightened in his chair. "There's something else. Something I didn't tell you earlier because I wasn't sure if it mattered." All eyes turned to the teenager, who shifted uncomfortably under the attention. "My grandfather's house, it has a hidden compartment, too, behind his workbench in the garage. He showed it to me once, said it was where he kept his insurance policy. I always thought he was just being dramatic." "Did you check this compartment after the break-in?" Bradley asked urgently. Tyler shook his head. "I didn't think of it until now. The police were focused on the obvious damage, and I was too upset to remember." Bradley and Agent Mercer immediately began making arrangements to secure and search Thomas Anderson's house. As they worked, Eleanor opened her father's journal again, turning to the final entries from October 1978, just before Project Blackboard was officially terminated. "He was planning to go public," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Not through official channels, those had failed him. He was going to take everything he had documented to a journalist he trusted. Did he name the journalist? Agent Mercer asked. Eleanor scanned the page. Only as M.H. At the Post, he was scheduled to meet with this person on November 2nd, 1978. She looked up, her eyes wide with realization. My father disappeared on October 31st. I was away at college. By the time I came home for Thanksgiving, my mother had been told he'd accepted a special assignment overseas. Bradley sat beside her. Eleanor, this journal may be the most compelling evidence we have. Your father was documenting a systematic effort to expose unethical activities conducted under government authority. And they killed him for it, she said, her voice hardening. They killed him and buried him beneath the very building where I've spent my career, where children have learned and played for decades. Agent Mercer's phone buzzed with an incoming message. After reading it, she looked up grimly. There's more. The forensic team has made a preliminary identification of the remains. Dental records are a match for Walter Whitfield. Eleanor closed her eyes. Decades of uncertainty collapsing into a terrible certainty. When she opened them again, they were clear and determined despite the tears. I want whoever did this held accountable, she said firmly. Not just the people who attacked the school today, the ones who gave the orders. In 1978 and now. That won't be easy, Agent Mercer cautioned. Operations from that era are heavily classified, and many of the principal figures are deceased. But not all of them, Bradley pointed out. Harrington is still alive. And if he was telling the truth about not knowing the full scope of Project Blackboard, he might be willing to help identify who did. Dawn was breaking over Millfield when Bradley and a small team arrived at Thomas Anderson's modest home. The local police had established a perimeter, and forensic technicians were already processing the scene of the previous break-in. Tyler directed them to the garage, where a heavy workbench stood against the back wall. It's behind here, he explained. There's a release mechanism under the left corner. With careful pressure applied to the spot Tyler indicated, a section of the wall paneling clicked and swung open, revealing a small compartment similar in design to those found at the school. Inside was a metal box, untouched by the intruders who had focused their search on more obvious locations. The box contained a maintenance logbook distinct from Thomas Anderson's personal journals, photographs labeled with dates and locations, and, most significantly, a small reel-to-reel tape with a handwritten label, W.W. Statement, Oct. 30, 1978. He recorded my father's statement, Eleanor breathed, staring at the tape, the day before he disappeared. The tape was carefully transported to an FBI facility where it could be properly preserved and digitized. The process took several hours, during which Eleanor alternated between anxious pacing and sitting in absolute stillness, preparing herself to hear her father's voice after more than 40 years. When the technician finally signaled they were ready, Eleanor, Bradley, Tyler, and Agents Dawson and Mercer gathered in a small conference room. The quality of the audio was remarkably good, preserved in the sealed container Thomas Anderson had hidden so carefully. Walter Whitfield's voice emerged from the speakers, measured and precise, much like his handwriting. He identified himself, stated the date, and then began a methodical account of his involvement with Project Blackboard from its inception in 1965 through October 1978. According to Walter's testimony, The facility had initially been established as a legitimate counterintelligence operation, focused on monitoring suspected Soviet activities in the region. In 1972, however, the project had been expanded under new leadership to include what Walter described as unauthorized human experimentation, focused on enhanced interrogation and memory modification techniques. They brought in subjects through unofficial channels. Walter's voice explained. Individuals who wouldn't be missed or whose disappearances could be explained away. Later, they began using children from the foster system, those with minimal family connections, claiming they were being placed in specialized care facilities. Eleanor pressed a hand to her mouth, horror evident in her eyes as her father detailed how he had discovered the true nature of the expanded operation through architectural modifications he was asked to approve. "I raised objections through proper channels," Walter continued. "First to my immediate superior, then up the chain of command. Each time I was assured the concerns would be addressed, but nothing changed. By 1976, I began documenting everything independently, realizing official records were being sanitized or destroyed. The most damning portion of the testimony came near the end, when Walter named specific individuals involved in overseeing the unauthorized aspects of Project Blackboard. Among them was Charles Harrington, James Harrington's brother, who had served as deputy director for a division Walter referred to only as special projects. James reported to Charles, Walter explained, but I believe James was deliberately kept unaware of the full scope. Compartmentalization was strict. The regular intelligence personnel were housed in the main facility, while the testing program operated in the isolated section with separate access protocols and dedicated staff. The recording ended with Walter stating his intention to deliver all his documentation to a journalist the following week, along with arranging for Raymond Foster to complete additional paintings containing coded documentation that would survive even if I do not. As the tape concluded, the room remained silent. Eleanor wiped tears from her cheeks, her grief now tinged with pride in her father's courage. Agent Dawson was the first to speak. "This changes everything. We have direct testimony connecting specific individuals to unauthorized human experimentation conducted on U.S. soil under government authority. But most of those individuals are likely dead," Agent Mercer pointed out. "This happened nearly 50 years ago." "Not all of them," Bradley said quietly. "And the organizations they built might still exist in some form. Whoever sent those men to attack the school is still very much alive and concerned about this information becoming public." Tyler, who had remained silent throughout the recording, finally spoke. "My grandfather knew. He helped Mr. Whitfield document everything, then kept the evidence safe all these years." "He was a hero," Eleanor said, reaching out to squeeze the boy's hand. "Both our fathers were heroes in their own way." As the FBI agents began discussing next steps for the investigation, Bradley stepped outside to check on Rex and call Chief Garner with an update. Standing in the morning sunlight, watching his K-9 partner exploring the perimeter with professional diligence, he reflected on how a routine school demonstration had uncovered a dark chapter of American history that some were still willing to kill to keep buried. The truth about Project Blackboard was finally emerging, but bringing those responsible to justice would require navigating a labyrinth of classified history, bureaucratic obstruction, and powerful interests with everything to lose. 3 months later, Jefferson High School reopened with a ceremony unlike any in its history. The east wing had been extensively renovated, removing all traces of the hidden facility beneath while preserving the historical integrity of the building itself. Where the mural "Young Scholars of Tomorrow" had once hung, a new installation now occupied the wall, a memorial plaque honoring Walter Whitfield and Thomas Anderson, alongside a professionally restored section of Raymond Foster's original painting. The school's reopening coincided with the public release of a heavily redacted FBI report on Project Blackboard. While many details remained classified, enough information had been made public to confirm that unauthorized activities had indeed taken place beneath the school during the 1970s, resulting in human rights violations and at least one confirmed death, that of Walter Whitfield. Eleanor Whitfield stood at the podium in the renovated gymnasium, facing an audience that included students, parents, community members, and a significant media presence. At 61, she carried herself with a new kind of dignity, that of someone who had confronted a painful truth and emerged stronger. My father believed in justice, in ethical governance, and in the fundamental principle that no cause, however noble its stated purpose, justifies harming innocent people, she began, her voice steady. For his commitment to these values, he paid the ultimate price. Today, we honor not only his memory, but his courage in standing against powerful forces that had lost their moral compass. In the front row, Bradley Thompson sat with Rex at his feet, the German Shepherd now wearing a special commendation medal presented by the FBI director himself. Next to them sat Tyler Anderson and his mother, along with Melissa Campbell, whose painstaking work reconstructing and interpreting Raymond Foster's artworks had proven crucial to the investigation. This school has always been a place of learning, Eleanor continued. Now it will also serve as a reminder that democracy requires vigilance, that secrecy without accountability corrupts, and that individual conscience matters. The Walter Whitfield Memorial Scholarship will support students pursuing careers in journalism, public service, and ethics fields that embody my father's commitment to truth and justice. The audience applauded as Eleanor unveiled a small model of a planned addition to the school grounds, a meditation garden where the remains of Walter Whitfield would finally rest with dignity, following a proper funeral service scheduled for the following week. As the ceremony concluded and guests mingled during the reception, Bradley found himself approached by James Harrington. The elderly ex-operative had aged visibly in the months since the discovery, his previous confidence replaced by a more subdued demeanor. "Officer Thompson," Harrington greeted him, leaning heavily on his cane. "Your dog looks well." Bradley nodded, reaching down to pat Rex's head. "He's thriving. The department has expanded his role to include therapy work with veterans. Turns out he has a special talent for connecting with people suffering from PTSD. Harrington smiled faintly. "Good, very good." He paused, looking around to ensure they weren't overheard. "I wanted you to know I've provided the investigators with everything I could remember about Charles and his associates. Most are gone now, but a few remain in positions of influence." The investigation had indeed revealed that while Charles Harrington had died in 1992, several junior officials involved with Project Blackboard had risen through government ranks over the decades. 2 had resigned immediately when the investigation became public. Another was currently facing federal charges related to the attack on the school and obstruction of justice. "I appreciate that," Bradley said sincerely. "It couldn't have been easy to testify against your brother's legacy. Charles betrayed everything we were supposed to stand for." Harrington replied, a flash of the old intensity returning to his eyes. I served my country believing in certain principles. What happened here? He shook his head. Walter was right to oppose it. I wish I'd known then what he was facing. I might have helped him. Before Bradley could respond, Eleanor approached, her expression guarded but not hostile as she acknowledged Harrington. Ms. Whitfield. The elderly man greeted her with respect. A moving ceremony. Your father would be proud. Thank you for your testimony, she replied simply. It helped bring some measure of justice. An uncomfortable silence fell between them, the daughter of the whistleblower and the man who had served the system that silenced him. Finally, Harrington spoke again. I've made arrangements to establish a trust, he said, for the families of those who can be identified from the Project Blackboard records. It won't make amends, but perhaps it can provide some support. Eleanor nodded, accepting the gesture for what it was, not absolution, but acknowledgement of responsibility. The historians working with the school archive would appreciate your perspective. Mr. Harrington, when you're ready. As Harrington moved away to speak with Agent Dawson, Tyler approached Bradley and Rex, kneeling to greet the German shepherd, who responded with dignified affection. I've decided to study forensic science, the teenager announced, his earlier trauma now channeled into purpose. I want to help solve cold cases, find answers for families like mine and Principal Whitfield's, who never knew what happened to someone they loved. That's a worthy goal, Bradley responded. The department has an internship program for high school students interested in law enforcement. I'd be happy to recommend you. Tyler smiled, the first genuine smile Bradley had seen from him since the discovery. Thanks. My mom says Grandpa would be pleased. He always wanted me to find something meaningful to do with my life. Across the gymnasium, Melissa Campbell was showing visitors the restoration work on the painting fragments. She had spent countless hours studying Raymond Foster's technique, preserving what remained of the original while documenting the coded elements hidden within the seemingly innocent scene. The painting itself was a sophisticated communication system, she explained to an interested group. The positioning of figures, the color choices, even the brushstroke patterns contained information about Project Blackboard. Foster developed this technique across several works, creating a distributed documentation system that survived even when individual paintings were destroyed or lost. Chief Garner joined Bradley, watching the gathering with satisfaction. Quite a different outcome than we expected when Rex tore into that painting, he observed. Hard to believe it's been only 3 months. Bradley nodded, remembering the moment when Rex had first alerted to the mural. He knew something was wrong. I've stopped being surprised by what he can detect. The FBI wants to establish a specialized K-9 unit for cold case investigations. Garner mentioned. They were impressed with how Rex identified remains that had been concealed for decades. They've asked if you'd be interested in consulting on the program. The offer was tempting. Bradley had found unexpected fulfillment in helping bring closure to Eleanor Whitfield and others affected by Project Blackboard. His own PTSD symptoms had diminished as he focused on bringing truth to light, a healing process he hadn't anticipated. I'll consider it, he told the chief. But Millfield is home now. Rex and I have put down roots here. The reception continued into the evening, transforming gradually from a formal commemoration into a community celebration of resilience and renewal. Students explored the renovated spaces with excitement. Faculty members shared stories about the school's history, and journalists conducted interviews for features that would bring Jefferson High's story to a national audience. As darkness fell, Eleanor found herself standing outside, gazing at the spot where the memorial garden would soon be constructed. Bradley joined her, Rex at his side as always. "I keep thinking about how random it seems," she said quietly. "If you and Rex hadn't been invited for that demonstration, if he hadn't detected whatever chemical trace remained after all these years—" She shook her head. "My father might never have received justice." "I don't think it was random," Bradley replied. "Your father and Thomas Anderson created a system designed to eventually reveal the truth. The painting, the hidden compartments, the documentation, they built it to last, knowing someday someone would find it." Eleanor smiled sadly. "I spent my whole career in this building, never knowing he was here all along." There's something both heartbreaking and comforting in that thought. Inside the gymnasium, someone had begun playing music, and the atmosphere had lightened as community members shared food and conversation. Through the windows, they could see Tyler showing younger students how to properly approach and pet a working dog like Rex, who sat patiently accepting the admiration. "Life goes on," Bradley observed. "That's what makes all of this worthwhile. The truth came out. Justice is being pursued, and new generations will learn from what happened here." Eleanor nodded, drawing a deep breath of the evening air. "My father believed that too. It's why he risked everything to document what was happening, not just for himself, but for everyone affected, and for the future." As they turned to rejoin the gathering inside, Eleanor paused one last time to look at the school building, seeing it now, not just as the place where she had built her career, but as her father's final resting place and lasting legacy. The secrets hidden behind the painting had indeed changed everything forever, bringing pain and loss into the light, but also healing and truth. "Thank you," she said simply to Bradley and Rex, "for finding him, for bringing him home." The story of Rex, Bradley, and Eleanor reminds us that truth may be buried, but never truly disappears. For our generation who lived through the Cold War, who remember a time when patriotism sometimes meant uncomfortable silence, this resonates deeply. We were raised to trust our institutions while witnessing their flaws firsthand, from Vietnam to Watergate to Iran, Contra, like Walter Whitfield. Many of us faced moments where personal integrity clashed with loyalty to systems we believed in. Some of us worked in buildings where secrets lived in the walls, or raised families while carrying burdens we couldn't share. Perhaps we knew someone who disappeared suddenly, with explanations that never quite made sense. This story honors those who chose conscience over comfort, who documented truths for a future they might never see. It acknowledges our complex legacy to younger generations, a world of both hidden shadows and remarkable courage. As we enter our golden years, may we find Eleanor's peace, the strength to face difficult truths about our past while celebrating the values worth preserving. After all, as Walter understood, healing only begins when what was hidden behind the painting finally sees the light of day.